Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weatherboys podcast. I am Derek Kevra. That is Alan Longstreet. And together we make up the Weatherboys, and this is our podcast, which we are recording remotely because we have a guest who is a very big deal, and we are lucky to have any time we can get with him, and that did not include at the Fox 2 studios, but we made the time. Your internet connection looks stellar, by the way.
Oh, it's fantastic. I got some nodes, so I'm good to go. I've placed them around the house, and so far, so good. We're looking real good here.
I've seen a lot of you today. Almost, some would say too much of you today.
Yeah, well, look at you. First of all, I mean, is that a three-quarter zip?
It's a quarter zip, all right. You know,
Yeah.
I love these. I feel
I
like
know.
I look nice.
It looks so
nice.
soft. It looks soft around your neck, like a scarf. That looks
is
real
kinda
nice. That
nice.
was very nice.
You want to borrow it? You can borrow it.
Yeah, I'd like that fabric. I would like the neck, just the neck though. The rest of it's fine. If you could cut it off around the neck, and I could just attach that to a shirt of mine.
Yeah, what do they call that? That's like, it's got like a name. It's called a
Is that a mock turtleneck?
no. I think I remember the name. I think it's called a dickie. So what you're asking me for is a dickie, just so you're.
I'm asking you to. Okay, I'm asking for your dickie. That's.
I guess that's what you're asking for.
Okay.
Because you
All
just
right.
want the part around the neck and not the
Well,
shirt itself.
you know what? Tell you what. On second thought, I don't.
You
On
don't
second
want that
thought, I
anymore?
don't. So no, thank you. But I have
I
seen
didn't make you say it. You said it. I didn't make you say it.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't make me say it. You just took the thing that I said and you turned it into another thing that I didn't say. But that's all right. We're here. I've seen you a lot today, and I have something to say to you.
Yeah, this is kind of surprising to me because you could have said it at like, I don't know, at any of the other 14 hours we've spent together. Go ahead.
I know. We've had a lot of things to discuss. This happened to me. I was on the early shift today on the TV. So you wake up in the middle of the night and you drive into work, and nobody's on the road. So when you see somebody on the road, I always think, oh, frick, they're going to carjack me. Or I think, oh, crap, they're going to pull me over because it's a police officer. And anybody on the road at that time is driving drunk, obviously, right?
It's
think, 2 in the morning.
Well, let's not make general statements, but go ahead. Continue the story.
Yeah, all of them are. And so I'm driving, and I see this vehicle pull out. They pulled out. They did a U-ey.
No.
They got right up behind me. And you know how those police officers' lights, they're brighter than normal lights. They probably aren't really, but they have a way of getting in your mirror and just blinding you. And so what had happened was they put their lights on, and a police officer pulled me over.
You did not get pulled over.
And so it's terrifying every time, even though I knew why he was pulling me over. I know what happened. We all know what happened, but it's still the pit in the stomach. You know, the good news is it wakes you right up. I had a headlight out.
Oh,
so that's
okay.
all. I had a headlight, and he gave me a ticket. Well, a fix-it ticket, right? You can zap it away. In 10 days if you get it fixed. So that's it.
Oh my! Are you doing okay? That'll shake a man up.
I know. That's why. Yeah. That's probably why I didn't tell you earlier. It was too fresh of a wound.
Yeah.
So I bought the headlight. Now I bought the light. I'm going to install it. Do a little install here.
I see
in the coming days.
And I know that you get ragged on sometimes for your car because it.
Do you rag on me for my car?
Oh.
For my 2010 Kia?
I mean,
what's happening?
I hear
here?
things. I hear things.
People talk about my poorness in my car.
But listen, this might be a good thing for you because those older cars, the headlights are easier to fix. Whereas with a new car, you got to take off like the whole front bumper to change a light bulb out, which is kind of insane.
It's a pain. No, for sure. The gadgets. No, I don't want the gadgets. You know why? Because the gadgets are going to break. Derek, I just want the car to turn on, and I want the car to go somewhere. I would prefer the car to be quieter. I have a muffler issue that I should probably fix, but otherwise, I like the oldness.
He didn't give you a ticket for the sound of the muffler?
I know. I thought, he probably should have. He probably woke up the neighborhood.
Oh, man. Was he surprised? Because I think you're right. Like, when he pulls somebody over at 2 a.m., he's thinking that they're leaving the bar and driving home.
Especially with a busted taillight or a headlight, busted headlight.
Right. No, sir. I'm simply driving to work so I can support my family and pay for my children. Yeah. And he didn't buy any of that. He didn't.
No. And the ticket's going to be rescinded. Like if you fix it within 14 days, that it's not a ticket. It's
more of a warning.
Yeah, and that's what he said. And I felt so bad. You know, he gave it to me. He goes, it's just kind of like a motivator to get it ready. And I was like, ugh, whatever. I didn't say that, but I wasn't as nice as I normally am, and I feel bad about it.
Well, we're going to try to cheer you up here because our guest today is a very exciting man, and we are lucky to have him. This week on the Weatherboys podcast, we are diving straight into the heart of a November storm, the kind that makes the Great Lakes roar and the legends rise. Our guest is John U. Bacon, one of Michigan's most celebrated storytellers and author of The Gales of November, a gripping new look at the storms, shipwrecks, and sailors that defined our inland seas. Now, you have read his best-selling books on sports, leadership, and grit, perhaps Bo's lasting lessons to let them lead, but this time he is steering into darker waters where weather and fate collide. We're going to talk about the real-life drama behind the Edmund Fitzgerald, the power of the lakes, and what drives Mr. Bacon to keep telling Michigan's biggest stories. So grab your life jacket and listen in as we head into a conversation with John U. Bacon,
Grab your
The
life
Gales of November. Mr. John U. Bacon, what a pleasant surprise for us. I must ask right off the bat, are you inside of a sauna? Where are you?
You might think so, but no, it's a cottage on Torch Lake, actually.
Oh, golly, you're living the American dream, the Michigan dream, that's for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I'm outnumbered here, Mr. Bacon. Nice to meet you. I feel like you guys are just old BFFs who have known each other forever, and I'm gonna be here on the outskirts and appreciate it.
Well, it happens fast, doesn't it, Derek? So thank you very much.
Well, it both happens fast and happens slow because when you're a Michigan man like John and myself are, you're bound to friendship for life. Isn't that right, John?
Something like that, sure, Derek.
We are going to talk about your brand new book, and this conversation is released after the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which happened Monday, November 10th. But before we get into that, because I've got a million questions about that, I want to talk about some of your older work because I was lucky enough to stumble across your book. It was the 2013 book, there's a third and a fourth, but I think it's fourth and out. No, third and out is the Rich Rod story.
3 and out, Rich Rod. Fourth and long is Penn State, but also the Big Ten.
That's it. And that
and
book.
then End Zone, of course, is the transition from Dave Brandon and Brady Hoke to Jim Hackett and Jim Harbaugh.
Right. So the book that got me turned on to you was that one, and I was fascinated by the level of just acceptance you had into these programs. Like, how did you get all of the Big Ten programs to just let you be a fly on the wall for like an entire season?
In the case of Bill O'Brien at Penn State, then the head coach, now he's the head coach at Boston College, of course. I was trying to pitch him for a while to get access to his program. He's a new coach. He's never been a head coach before. He's taken over for Joe Paterno, a legend, obviously, and this is in the wake of Jerry Sandusky and that whole tragedy. And I'm trying to pitch him on letting me get access. And then I walk into his office and see Bo's Lasting Lessons on his desk. That's the book I wrote with Bo Schembechler a few years earlier. When I saw that, Derek, I thought my odds just went way up. So that was a very, very good to see. I'll say that. And Bill was fantastic.
Can I ask maybe a dumb question? How'd you get into the office to begin with? Are we breaking and entering, or because that alone I feel like would be step number one?
A buddy of mine was Joe Batista. He was the hockey coach at Penn State for many years when they're still a club team. He helped them go varsity and got the Pagula family to contribute $100 million for their rink. So Joe was down the hall from Bill, not too far away. And so we were back and forth on that one. So that's how I got access to at least to the office. And after that, start talking.
Yeah, but still, I mean, you get the access. What is that like though, as a reporter with access like that? So I don't know if you watch Ted Lasso. I'm currently starting my second rewatch. Love that show. And so you must relate with the reporter of that show, the guy that writes for The Independent, and he has access in the third season. And that's kind of how I picture your access for these teams. But is it weird because you're there and they know you're writing about them, but they're still living their lives and trying to act normal? So like, how does that work?
Well, it can work a lot of ways, of course. I'd say two things. One, on the not so exciting part, a lot of hanging out in these locker rooms, practices, and so on is frankly pretty boring. It's just, guys taping their cleats and whatnot. It's, and a lot of practice is not that exciting either. It's guys shoving around sleds and whatever else. But when it is exciting, when it is telling, it's very exciting and very telling. So it's 90% of waiting and 10% of you better pay attention, because what's happening now gets in the book. So at first, they're probably a little standoffish, a little concerned about having a reporter around. But if they see that you're getting along with the coach, they see that that you've been trusted. So as they get to know you, of course, all that helps. In the case of Three and Out, the Rich Rodriguez book, I was doing pretty well with the players and the coaches for the first season, '08. But before the second season, '09, I worked out with the team for 6 weeks. And that is like death, only slower and louder. It was insanely brutal. And I was not lifting anywhere near what these guys were lifting, of course.
So when you say working out, you worked out with them.
90 minutes a day, 3 days a week for 6 weeks. And
these are college athletes age 18 to 22, so they're in like the prime of their athletic career.
What are you saying about Mr. Bacon, Derek?
No, I'm just saying, like, that's hard.
You can see the problem, is all I can say on that one. Yes. I signed like 10 pages of waivers on a clipboard.
Sure, right. You might die here.
Oh, that's exactly what it was. I mean, they spelled it out, man. Their lawyers were not messing around. Like,
sure.
If the bar comes back and smashes your neck in half, sign here. If your heart explodes while standing, sign here.
While standing.
It was crazy. I did not know. I've thrown it before from running hard with my high school hockey team when I was coaching those guys in Ann Arbor. All this kind of stuff. I did not know you could throw up from lifting weights, and in fact, you can. And that happened to me within about half an hour, probably 20 minutes of my first workout. What these guys do is it's got nothing to do with what you're doing at the YMCA. Trust me.
Sure.
Did you, with the Rich Rod story, did you just luck into that one? Like, were you just following the team at that time, and then the whole drama with him kind of played out? Because it feels like the odds of you knowing that this is going to unravel the one season I'm here, the odds of that seem pretty low. So
the odds of that are extremely low because I'm not that smart. So, so what happened was this: we thought it was going to be 3 months. I'm watching the spread offense come to the very conservative Big Ten, and la-di-da. We thought the whole story was going to be on the field. How will this new system, the run pass option, the RPOs and all that, how is that going to translate to Big Ten football? And of course, it became very quickly evident that this story is happening off the field more than on the field. It was palace intrigue. It was a clash of cultures, basically. The West Virginia guys and the Michigan guys and so on. And how is this going to work? So that became the story more than the on the field drama.
And then similar thing with Dave Brandon, right? I mean, like it feels like Michigan football was a never-ending source of content for you.
The drama was endless, and really, I mean, someone's got to write a book about the last 3 or 4 years, because from COVID to the present has been not boring. Also, all kinds of highs and lows in there, including on and off the field with the Big Ten, the NCAA, and you name it. So I'm not sure I'm going to be the guy who writes that story, but someone should, I think.
Maybe this is a dumb question. When you did when you guys were talking about the Rich Rod thing, and you talk about the drama that's the palace intrigue that's behind the scenes, does that I have to imagine that changes the nature of your job being in there? Did people look at you more suspiciously? Were there more quiet whispers?
I can't say for sure about that, but what I always promise any of my subjects, whether I like them or not, or they're doing good or bad, or who knows what, is that I will send you your quotes before they go out to make sure I got them right. And I know very few journalists who do this. It takes a lot longer doing it this way, but at least gives the subject the assurance that they're not going to be misquoted out of context unfairly. It is not where other journalists think, oh, you can't do that. They misconstrue what I'm offering. I'm not offering, you don't get to write the book. The book is mine. It's my name on the cover. And I guarantee almost everyone in that book does not like all of it. That's pretty much a given at that point. But you'll be able to present yourself at least accurately and fairly. And we can also discuss what's on the record, what's off the record, because I'm around everything.
Sure.
So to get the kind of access, I can say, look, at the end, we can negotiate basically what's on the record, what's off the record. Some things get too personal. Some things about your family, your teenage kids, things like this that no one wants out there.
In movies, the way that works is whenever you're around a reporter, you have to say, this is off the record. Is that how it goes in real life? Or it sounds like it's not.
That's in real life, yes, because
Oh,
that's legally what you have to do. You
oh,
have to say, this is off the record before you say whatever it is you're going to say. You can't go blah, 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 blah. Oh, and by the way, oh, yeah, I killed the butler. Oh, by the way, that's off the record. You can't do that. But the way I set it up, I do offer that, and that is set up before we get in. It's not in writing, but my word has always been good. So whoever liked or disliked my books, and now I've got 14 out there, I guarantee you, not one person has ever said that they were misquoted, taken out of context, that is not accurate. If some guy in California or New Zealand gets on Twitter or Amazon and says, your book sucks, all right, that can happen. Frankly, I'm not that concerned. It depends on who they are, what they're saying. But if somebody in the book says you screwed it up, if someone in the book says you got it wrong, now you got a real problem. So I think the subject is better served. I'm better served, but most importantly, the reader is better served. You get more, by far, information this way than you'd ever get otherwise.
how do you come up with your ideas for books? I mean, I know a lot of them early in your career have been sports, but now you've got the book about the Edmund Fitzgerald. So is it just topics that interest you?
Pretty much. And they kind of have to be, Derek, because you end up spending either a very intense year on the football books or the hockey books, the leadership books and so on, or you spend, in this case, 3.5 years. This one took me a lot longer than I expected, and I wrote a lot of it right here at the cottage, actually, by myself for 4 or 5 days at a stretch. If you've seen The Shining, you get the idea of what I'm doing up here. But anyway, hopefully a better outcome. Um, but oftentimes one idea will beget another idea. That's often the case. So one book will spring another book and so on. I must have 20 or 30 half developed ideas in my computer already, like, 5 to 10 pages on various ideas, kind of ready to go based on what the environment is and when the time is right. But you better be very, very interested in what you're doing, because that's going to be your main companion for 2 or 3 years.
You said you wrote 14 books. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Like, I have 8 million questions about that. So many of them were New York Times bestsellers. Did you every author, I assume, wants to be there. Did you really think that you would get there? And then once you got there, did you think you would continue to be there? Because I imagine one success isn't easy, but I got to imagine continued success is hard. And then I'll save the other question because I got too many thoughts going around.
Well, that's okay, Alan. At this point, the kind of contracts I'm getting, the publisher expects a bestseller, frankly. And this book we're about to talk about on the Edmund Fitzgerald hit number 6 in its debut week nationwide. Number 15 the second week, and we'll probably get back on it again with the anniversary. So what that keeps the publisher happy, and if the publisher's happy, you get another contract to write another book. So Mitch Albom, of course, can write whatever he wants, certainly, and God bless him for it. He's earned that right, Lord knows. But I kind of go from book to book to book, so they all need to be successful.
You seem very confident. Do you ever get like nervous? Like, oh my gosh, I have this, because like the book industry, you get a contract, right? And then you have to write the actual book. Is that how that works?
That's the scary part.
Yeah.
Yes. If you talked to me a year ago when I was up here, I realized I'm running out of time and this book is not done. It's like 5-10 drafts from being done. I would have sounded a lot less confident, I guarantee you.
Got it.
The book has been out for a month. It's a New York Times bestseller, and it's doing very well, and we're getting great reviews. So I sound a whole lot more confident now than I would have a year ago or even a month ago. So we're in a better spot.
Yeah, the book is great. The Gales of November, the untold story of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And this is no accident that you released the book 30 days before the anniversary of the Edmund Fitzgerald. You released it in Ann Arbor, which is very exciting. As a Michigan people, we're very proud to call you one of our own, and we'll get more into Michigan talk.
He won't shut up about it, with all due respect.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But let's talk about the book, because this is something that has captivated the minds and the hearts of people, not just in the state of Michigan, but all around the world for the last 50 years. What was it like writing a book about the Edmund Fitzgerald?
Well, I definitely felt a lot of pressure on a lot of levels. One, that this is our last chance really to write the book on the Edmund Fitzgerald, because I got to 6 crewmen who had been on the ship obviously before it went down, because all 29 men went down with the ship that night. But six guys had served in the ship, knew the captain, knew the crew, knew the ship. 2 were on that year. So that was pretty amazing. I got to 14 of the 29 families who were willing to talk, and none of these people had ever talked to a reporter before. So these are all new interviews. I interviewed more than 100 people, and many of them 5, 10, 15 times each. So all that's the untold part. So it's our last chance. You can't write this book in 10 years. You just can't. Um, Two members of the band are still alive, still playing. I got to those guys, the two guys who wrote the articles for the Associated Press and Newsweek magazine. They're still alive and still sharp. I got lucky repeatedly. So I felt the pressure of this is your one last best shot to tell this story. So that was certainly pressure. And of course, it took me 3.5 years, which, again, the other books, and you mentioned Ted Lasso, I wrote Let Them Lead, Unexpected Lessons in Leadership from America's Worst High School Hockey Team. That's about coaching my old high school hockey team. That was the time 0, 22, and 3. And I was the worst player in school history, and I can prove that also. So Good Morning America called me the real Ted Lasso. And that's going to get stamped on the 6th edition coming up. That one's still selling very well. But this one took me 3.5 years. And I asked my wife, why is this taking me so long? And she said, oh, that's easy. You didn't know anything. And I thought I knew a lot about this. I wrote a 60-page proposal on the book that was obviously, I hope, knowledgeable. I spent a year at the Detroit News traveling the state for Great Lakes stories. So, I mean, I knew this stuff probably about as well as anybody outside of the experts, I guess. But man, 95% of what's in this book, I did not know 4 years ago. And that's where I felt pressure to make sure you get all this stuff right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's weather-related stuff. There is decision-making stuff. I mean, do you think with the choices made by Captain McSorley, I mean, within your research, is there anything that you learned that did make you second guess some of the things that happened that night?
Second guess in terms of?
Well, the choice, first off, to not take safe harbor in the multiple different options he had, or even staying off to the north and deciding that he wanted to cut back down between the two islands and try to make it to Whitefish Point. I mean, there's
second guessing him, in other words.
Yeah. Which, by the way, and I don't mean this in the sense of like we're second guessing choices of men that, unfortunately perish, but just, there are things we'd learn along the way. I mean, even weather forecasting wise, since that, weather forecasting has improved on the Great Lakes because they added buoys. Yeah, they added buoys. They added restrictions when it comes to like battery life and certain things. So I guess I'm just wondering, in that sense, what did you learn?
A lot, and I'm not a meteorologist, unlike some people here I can name. But I mean, when I read a football book or a hockey book or a leadership book, man, I already know half the story, at least. I know half of what's going on. In this case, I mean, I knew port and starboard, and I've sailed Port Huron to Mackinac. I've been on all the lakes, but I did not know what taconite was. I didn't know how the storm systems actually functioned in Allen's level, basically. So I had a whole lot to learn. I did.
There's hope for me too.
There you go. But as far as McSorley goes, he's the captain of the ship, for those who don't know. Ernest McSorley. He is a captain at 31. He's the youngest captain at the Great Lakes when he first became captain out of 300. So that shows you how good he was. And now he's 63 years old. So more than half his life has been spent as a Great Lakes captain. And by all accounts, he was the best out of 300. And I heard that from his former crew. I heard that from his rivals. Pretty much everyone thought that. But you still have to tell the story objectively. And, why did the ship go down? I side with John Tanner. He's the former superintendent of the Great Lakes Maritime Academy. He said, when a big ship like this goes down, it is rarely one thing. It is usually a confluence of events, a combination of things. The worst storm in a century, we'll get into that in a second, I'm sure. Some design flaws in the ship itself when it was built in 1958. Some mechanical failures that night, both onshore and on board. And as you said, some decisions that, could have gone otherwise. So for the most part, I think the decisions he made that night were very good decisions. And some of them, nonetheless, backfired. So, for example, is a very aggressive captain on the last run of his career. He told his wife that 5 of his peers were going to retire after this trip in 3 days in Toledo. And he tacked down this one last trip. They're supposed to stop the week earlier because he already passed his quota for cargo. So he gets a bonus as a captain. And that bonus was going to pay for his wife's medical care. She was in 24-hour care at that point. Probably cancer, I think, but I couldn't quite ascertain that. So this is a good guy doing a good thing, frankly, and beloved by his crew. They followed him from ship to ship to ship, and they don't often do that, by the way. So that's the kind of guy he was. So when they leave port with the storm of the century coming, and this storm, Alan, ends up having 100-mile-per-hour winds. That is hurricane force, as you know. 30, 40, 50, maybe even 60-foot waves, our computer models now tell us. As one of my experts said, this ship ended up in the exact wrong place at the exact wrong time. And it was the only ship in this circle, basically, at that time. The Anderson was about 15 miles behind it, about an hour behind, basically. So it was truly dumb luck, bad luck at that point. And the forecasting was not that good at that point. As important, the communication of the forecasting was not that good. There's a complacency in the entire industry that they could have done a better job, even with what they had in 1975, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So,
John, if I may add to that, because we interviewed, because we have a special, it aired November 10th, the 50th anniversary on Fox 2, and you can find that online and on YouTube as well. But we interviewed some folks from the National Weather Service, and they said on November 9th, a gale warning was issued. That was upgraded to a storm warning on the morning of November 10th. And they said that there is evidence that was relayed via radio to Captain McSorley. So there's evidence that he did know. But that all said, he was already on the water. Like you're like the plan is already happening at that point. So getting that information, while useful, you're still, especially with somebody who's a 31, 32-year veteran of Lake Superior, he's going to say, "Yeah, it's fine. I know what I'm doing."
And
it's the same.
You know, Derek, not all I don't even know what a storm warning is. It's a different name now, but not all warnings are the same. You know, this like it's weather is that's especially out on the lakes. That's wild.
Well, and I would suggest a similar kind of feeling for, and I worked down in New Orleans for 4 years. But when a hurricane is in the Gulf of Mexico, there are a lot of men that work on the oil rigs out in the Gulf, and they say, "Yeah, no, it's fine. Like we've been through 100 of these. We're okay." And McSorley literally had been through hundreds of those. And so he was familiar with a storm like that, at least he thought, because this storm that originated in Oklahoma, that low tightened up so quickly and so fast that it became one of those storms that you do only see once every 100 years.
Well, that's all true, and I think it's all fair. And by no means am I claiming here that the National Weather Service delivered an abject failure. And it's in the book. The gale warning, the storm warning, they'd crank it up, okay, there's going to be 40-mile-per-hour winds or 50-mile-per-hour winds. But nowhere in there are the 100-mile-per-hour winds they got. So there were warnings, but they were not sufficient, I would say that. And they're also not as thorough as they needed to be. McSorley knew almost nothing about the storm coming from the southwest. And oftentimes when the Great Lakes are at their worst, it's two storm systems combining. In this case, the Alberta Clipper, bringing cold, dry air from Western Canada and heavy winds, and the storm from the southwest. They knew about the Clipper. They knew very little, if anything, about the southwestern storm, bringing hot, wet air. And when these things, combine, that's going to get ugly. And they happen to combine right in front of Whitefish Bay. That's safety. If you can get to Whitefish Bay, you've made it, basically. And these storms set up like a catcher in front of home plate. So that's just, dumb luck and cruel. So the National Weather Service did not fail abjectly, but they could have done a better job. And in the future, they did do a better job.
They did. Yeah. So two things. First off, I love that you're one of us now, John. You are a meteorologist. I can tell. Just listening to you talk about the weather with Alberta Clippers and moist air, warm air from the south. But they have added things like they've added codes now for maritime people. Certain codes, it escapes me right now, but it's like code 0721, where it's weather conditions deteriorating quickly. And it's directly due to the Edmund Fitzgerald. I mean, these things, that they are learning points, and you do adapt from then.
Well, exactly. And the comparison I use now in my speeches, and I wish I had thought of this when I wrote the book, is 9/11. 9/11, I mean, did everyone fail completely? I mean, ultimately, I have to say they did, because we saw what happened. But there were some warnings out there. There were some signs and so on. They weren't loud enough, basically. So in this case, I think the same thing applies. The forecasting could have been better. The communication could have been better. But also, there's the aspect of plain common sense. And in deference to the National Weather Service and the Coast Guard and so on, in 1975, the greed of the companies was pretty strong, frankly. They did not want their captains hiding, as they say, behind Keweenaw Bay or Isle Royal. They don't want them, getting the lead of the land. You keep going, you go, you go, you go. So they always did. And McSorley always went. And these captains also have some culpability as well, because they get bonuses based on delivering the cargo, no question about that. There's also the ego / competitiveness common to NFL coaches. That is certainly true in this case. And here's how it works: if you're sailing a ship, Derek, and so is Alan, and I
I'm
beat
gonna
both
win.
of you. Yeah, well, my point. There you go. Thanks for proving the point, Alan. I'm going to win too, by the way. Here we go. Let's find out. And that's before we get into greed or National Weather Service or anything else. But if I beat you by 1 minute getting to Parisian Island in Whitefish Bay, or Detour, Michigan, going upbound to the Sioux Locks, if I beat you by 1 minute, I've beaten you by an hour. Because I hold my space in front of you, and it takes an hour to go through the Sioux Locks, and you got to wait for me to do it. So once that happens, now I leave an hour before you do, going southbound to Detroit or Toledo or Cleveland. If I beat you by an hour, guess what? When I dock at Zug Island in Detroit, I'd beat you by 14 hours, because that's how long it takes to unload one of these things. So that 1 minute becomes 14, 15 hours. And that's if it all works properly. If the Hewletts break down, I've beaten you by a day or a day and a half. And trust me, the companies in Gary, Indiana, and Detroit, and Cleveland, Ohio, they all know exactly where you stand. So this is part of their mindset, and they have a hard time turning that off no matter what the weather is. So it's kind of everything at once. It's not just any one thing, but everyone has done a better job since then. Here's two crazy stats for you. From 1875 to 1975, there were at least 6,000 commercial shipwrecks on the Great Lakes. We're talking about big freighters and so on, schooners and whatnot, not rowboats. That's a crazy number. That's one per week for a century, and some say it's 10,000, but let's call it 6,000 for now. Since November 10th, 1975, the answer is 0, not 1. And that, Alan just popped right up. So did I. It's crazy. You go from 6,000 for a century to 0 for half a century. Why is that? Forecasting, communications, and plain old common sense. These days, when it gets to this level, you anchor. And in the old days, they never did.
Yeah, if there were one per week per century, I don't know. Why do we know so much about this one? Why did this capture the imagination? Am I just because I live here?
It's the song, man.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Why everyone knows this one. And why do you not know about the other 6,000, basically? My answer is this is an invisible industry. And I did not appreciate that until I started writing this book. There are 300 big ships 50 years ago. Now there are about 100 big ships. Some of them are much bigger than the old ones. So it's about half the load, not a third, but they carry more. But anyway, there are 300 ships out there. There are only 30 crew people. Now it's co-ed. Crew per ship. That's only 9,000 back in the heyday. It's only 3,000 now. Spread that out over 8 Great Lakes states where they live, and you're not going to meet any of these guys. And even, Alan, if they live next door to you, you're still not meeting that guy because he's on a ship.
They're gone
9 months out of the year. He's not home. So these guys didn't coach your baseball team. They're not in the Rotary Club, all this stuff. As one of my guys said, I've got 3 kids. I'm very close to all 3. I did not teach any of them how to play baseball or ride a bike because they're not home. And yet this industry, without this industry, Detroit does not exist. I'm not kidding you. This is where the cement in your basement comes from, the car in your driveway comes from, the food on your table, and around the world. This is all true. All this stuff comes from Great Lakes ships. Why is that? Because shipping is 3 times more efficient than trains and 6 times more efficient than trucks. Not 6%, not 60%, 600% more efficient than trucks. They can put on a ship, they're going to.
You say that none of them are your neighbors. I will contest that because one of my neighbors is just down the street, and it was one of those chance encounters where I was talking to him. He had a sign out front of his house, and he said, I sharpen knives.
I'm a sailor.
Yeah, a retired guy, and he sharpened knives. And I was like, well, hey, I'll go down and meet a neighbor and get some knives sharpened. Turned out he was a welder on the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? He was a welder on the ship. He worked out of the docks in Detroit.
Yep.
And he welded the ship. Yep. And he, his name is Dale, nice guy. I did a story with him on Fox 2 actually a couple years ago. But he said, I asked him, did you ever get a chance to meet Captain McSorley? He said, I never met McSorley, but I did meet the first mate. I said, tell me a little bit about the first
John
mate.
McCarthy.
Yeah. Yes. He said, well, he was a real asshole. And I said, okay. And he said, but he did, for lack of a better phrase, he ran a tight ship. And He did he made sure everything was in order, which is actually something that we had heard. We interviewed a cook on the ship. He was a cook on the ship when he was 19 years old. The year before it went down, he said his uncle was on the ship when it went down. His uncle and his dad both worked in the industry. He said his dad tried to get him to not work in the industry, but kind of what he knew. But it is interesting. You talk to some of these people, and they do say the Edmund was a wonderful ship to work on.
It was the ship to work on. And in fairness to John McCarthy, I don't know when the welder worked on the ship or not, but John McCarthy was the first mate from 72 to 75, and he had a great reputation with the crew that I talked to who knew him personally. So he might be the first mate before that, and who knows what that was.
Yeah.
So I don't want to impugn a dead man, of course, without a chance to respond.
Well, Derek will.
Well, no, quoting someone else.
There you go. But this was, I also did not appreciate this when I started working on this story. We all know this ship from the song, of course, but this ship was famous before it went down. This ship was the ship out of 300 on the Great Lakes. It was when it launched in Detroit in June 23rd, 1958. When it launched, it attracted 15,000 people came to the launch ceremony. The Detroit News covered, the Detroit Free Press covered it, and they said this is the greatest object ever launched into the Great Lakes, and it was. It was the longest at 729 feet. It carried the most cargo. It broke every record in the Great Lakes for 13 straight years until the 1,000-footers came along. It was just that spectacular, and get this, it was the most luxurious. And that seems like a crazy thing to say about an ore carrier. But they hired J.L. Hudson, right downtown Detroit. Of course, we all know that company, to outfit it to make it the most luxurious ship on the Great Lakes. They had carpeted living quarters. They had wood paneling on the walls. They had tiled bathrooms. They had TVs and AC when no one had these things in hotels in Detroit in 1958. So this was the ship and the best galley, that's the kitchen, and the best food by far. That's how you attract the best captain, the best crew, and these guys truly were.
Yeah, the TV thing was an interesting note when we started doing research, because I didn't know that. I didn't know that they had TVs on the boat, but they did. And the cook that we interviewed said the same thing. He said one way to get the best crew is you have the best amenities, and that's what the Edmund Fitzgerald had.
They did.
Now, John, you said that it's hard to pin this on one thing, and you said there's sort of a bunch of things that went poorly together. Will there ever be a time in the future when there is an answer? I know that there have been they've gone down to look at the ship, but from my understanding, that's kind of more limited now. Will there be? Do you think that there will be a definitive? This is why this thing happened down the line somewhere.
Well, I think we got closer to it in this book. I did track down a man named Dick Race. He is the best diving investigator on the Great Lakes for decades, and known to be that by a lot of guys I talked to. When there's a Boeing, I think it's a 737, that crashed in Lake Michigan in the 60s, late 60s, he's the one who found it. He's that kind of guy. So he had his own ship, the Neptune, based out of Chicago. He worked with the Chicago Police Department, the Great Lakes Maritime Academy. He was the guy. He was commissioned by the company Ogilvy Norton that leased the ship and operated the ship. They owned the ship. To dive down there a few months later in the spring of 76 on 6 Fathom Shoal, which the Edmund Fitzgerald might have crossed. We're not quite sure. The Bernie Cooper, the captain of the Anderson, thinks that it did. He saw it on the radar. But anyway, did it, bottom out at 6 Fathom Shoal or not? A fathom is 6 feet. This is only 36 feet deep and only 11 feet deep, really, in some places. So you don't want to be anywhere near this. If you're a ship that's already drafting 29 feet on a good day, this is not a good day. This is going up and down 20, 30 feet. So anyway, he apparently dived down and had a report for Ogilvy Norton. And I tried so hard to find this report, and I could not do so, but I finally found out why, probably. Peter Grow was in charge of their documents, their archives at Ogilvy Norton. When they went bankrupt, he had 2 years to go through all these bankers' boxes, I think more than 1,000 actually, for all their ships. And only 3 boxes were missing. They were all in the Edmund Fitzgerald. They weren't signed out by anybody, and there's no trace anywhere. So that is probably where that report is, and that could be in the bottom of Lake Erie for all I know. So who knows? But He did talk to 3 people I tracked down. He passed away in 2002, I believe, right after 9/11. But he talked to John Tanner, the superintendent of the Great Lakes Maritime Academy in Traverse City, Ed Wiltsey, the captain of the Badger that runs out of Ludington across to Manitowoc in Wisconsin across Lake Michigan, and Earl Zulke, a retired lieutenant in the Chicago Police Department. And he told all 3 the same thing, that I dived down and found Edmund Fitzgerald's distinctive maroon paint on the sandstone floor of 6 Fathom Shoal. And a nearby rock scratched, he said, it could only be by a ship. Does that prove it authoritatively? I can't claim that, but it certainly is highly suggestive.
Johnny Bacon, we could talk to you all day, but that would be very unfair for that voice of yours, which has been very stressed out over the last few weeks and about a month now as you've been promoting the book. Let people know where they can find the book.
Sure. johnnubacon.com has got a lot of ways to order it, including your local independent bookstore, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you name it. Also how to get your book signed, and also the book tour. I'll be traveling through basically December 15th. On this book tour, and a few more stops already in 2026.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time, Mr. Bacon. It has truly been our pleasure to host you.
Very kind. Thank you.
And you can watch all of the Weatherboys podcast and all of our content by logging on to our YouTube page, as well as Spotify, where all of our podcasts are posted. And you can see them all on the free Fox Local app, free to download. Just scroll down a little bit, and you will see the Weatherboys section with all of our content there. Thank you for listening, everybody. See you next time.